Great, thank you. Welcome, thank you for coming out. Lovely to do that little bit of silence with you. Suddenly I go, oh, I'm working with a group that's already cooked. I don't need to cook here. You went straight into where we needed to go, to earth the space and hold the space. So thank you. In the introduction, you mentioned that I'd just taken an off-qual accredited course through all the paperwork and the admin. And it's the first off-qual accredited course in spirituality in the UK. Off-qual is the body that accredits on behalf of the government all courses outside the university sector. So BTECs, A-levels, accountants, dancers, yoga, it all comes under the off-qual umbrella. And some of you may have read a piece I wrote about doing the paperwork for the course, because I'm not good at paperwork. I'm a creative, so I'm not good at putting information into boxes. I kind of weird out when I'm looking at Excel sheets and databases. Some of you may be the same as me. And I've had 2 or 3 decades of avoiding them, ignoring them, or taking the piss out of them, which was another way of avoiding them. But in order to land the course, I had to do a very solid piece of paperwork involving Excel sheets and boxes. And it's a 32-page document that gets submitted to this government body to go through the process. And I didn't like it. It was creating anxiety in me. And so I resorted to a default mechanism from my early 20s, which is just a little bit of ceremony. So I had the paperwork in front of me, computer open, another monitor open so I could refer to the right references, and I lit a candle, I dropped down into my body, I said a prayer, which basically said, please help. And what I didn't put in the original article was that I put in the prayer was angel of admin and paperwork. Which must be in some way or another related to Mercury, God, angel of communications. Please come in and just hold the space and help me. And I then started to do the paperwork. And a month into it, I was actually beginning to enjoy it. But part of my normal working style is to pause and allow in some help when I need to. So me doing this talk is partly me coming home, having done about 18 months worth of bureaucratic paperwork, and I just wanted to talk about angels and nature spirits and not do any more paperwork. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how I got into it, and then it's going to go in 2 directions simultaneously. One is how I understand it and how I experience it. And how I understand it is completely up for grabs, because the way I understand it may not be a good interpretation. It's my interpretation. How I experience it is also up for grabs, because I still have half a dozen brain cells saying I'm still making it all up. Only half a dozen in the midst of billions of others, but I still have that part of me. And that's part of not just being a well-trained energy worker, a well-trained esotericist, in so much as a well-trained energy worker, esotericist working with spirits, angels, has always got to have their bullshit scanners up inside their own psyche for delusion, for projection, for mistaking imagination for what's actually there, and for reining oneself back in when there's a level of excitement going with the perceptions that leads to behavior that's antisocial, which is moving towards a mental health problem. And one of the challenges for mainstream society, as it listens to those of us who may talk about nature spirits, angels, archetypes, is that often when they hear that kind of information, they're hearing it from people who are in mental health crises. They're not hearing it from people who are grounded, integrated, self-reflective, self-managing. And the reason I have that firmly in my psyche is partly because my dad was a psychiatrist and my mum was a psychologist and New York journalist. And they had both been in a Japanese prisoner of war camp for 3 years, where they were very brutally treated. And when they came back to London in 45, I was born in 48, they were still frozen, slightly in trauma, absolutely wanting stuff that was civilized and straight, and therefore the moment they perceived anything religious, spiritual, veering towards either fundamentalism or veering towards fantasy and imagination, they were immediately very suspicious, backed off, because they associated it with stuff that was dangerous. So I was brought up in that environment and learnt very early on not to talk to them about my inner experiences. Because the moment I talked to them about my inner experiences, this is starting from the age of 5 or 6, I noticed that their attitude to me was, isn't that lovely? And it's not real. Calm down, it's not real. And so it was very confusing at one level, because I was getting this open-hearted, because they were good people, warm-hearted people, but I was getting this mixed message of, we're looking after you, and 2, shut up about that stuff, because we don't want to hear it. Incarnationally, I think that's a useful place for me to incarnate into, because it kept me on my toes and gave me very early on awareness of the need to be careful and self-reflective. So I don't have anything except a good feeling towards the fact that they couldn't hear it. And I'm very understanding, because they were also in trauma from their time in Changi, in the Japanese prisoner of war camp. But from the age of 5 or 6, like many, many children, I was just simply aware of presence. I can't put it more strongly than that. And, decades on, I am still, in a sense, in precisely the same space. I'm aware of presence. And that presence or presences filter through my field into my nervous system, brain, psyche, where I have to interpret what I'm sensing. I'm not clairvoyant, I don't get pictures, but I'm, at one level, as people who know me would say, I'm very accurate in what I feel and sense. Fast forward from the age of 5 to 22, I've been through Swinging London, Flower Power, I'm working in publishing, and a book lands on my desk, a submission for publication, which was, I was 21, 22, I was working for a publishing house called Macmillan's near Fleet Street, and the book was from a group called Ekankar. Do any of you remember Ekankar? It was a interesting group, but they were into beings that you couldn't see. And I sat there reading this book about angels. It was submitted, and I just couldn't put it down. And 200 pages into it, I went, this is describing my experience. And so I was 21, 22, and from that moment on, for 5 years, longer maybe, I read 2 or 3 or 4 esoteric books a week, gobbling them up, just to see what the maps were. What are the maps? I read nearly all of Theosophy, all of Alice Bailey, a lot of anthroposophy, most of the classic esoterics of the Western mystery tradition, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Celtic Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, all the stuff that was translated and emerging through the flower power movement. Later on, much later on, I did a doctorate because I like doing research and sucking up information. And there was this map of what I was experiencing. And I then did, as some of you may know, I then did a 2-year retreat in the high Atlas Mountains of southern Morocco. And people say, oh, you went off to just get stoned, didn't you? And that's absolutely not true. I went off into the high Atlas Mountains in order to do a 6-month ritual to meet my holy guardian angel. So 22, 23 years old, I went into psychoanalysis because my dad was a shrink. I was into understanding myself, and because I was getting into this land of the imagination, which was no longer the imagination, but people were saying it was real. This was the thing about all these books. They were all from different traditions, all over the globe, different times, different points in history. They were all pointing to a description of an inner world where they used different symbols and different language and different myths and different archetypes, but they were all describing the same thing. And I'm going, bloody hell, yes, I'm not alone. It's there in all the traditions. But at the same time, because of my parents, I'm going, I must be bloody mad. I'm bonkers, right? This is just kind of the haze of the LSD I used to take. This is just what's going on here, right? And at that point, I went into psychoanalysis. 3 years psychoanalysis, twice a week talk therapy, which also built on my ability to be reflective about myself and go, well, what kind of bullshit is going on here? I really, any of you who are energy workers or esotericists or working with angels, I really recommend you get into some kind of talk therapy at some point just to learn how to do discriminatory inner dialogue in order to check yourself out. Otherwise, you can just go bonkers. Which I didn't. Or maybe I did. Or maybe we all are. Maybe we're all in the Bardo state right this second. We all died. Here we are in the capsule, about to launch into the temple of learning. Or not. Anyway, I'm just playing. So at the end of the psychoanalysis, my shrink, who had known Freud, he was 82 when I went to see him, said, no, you're not mad. And he died about a week before I went off on this trip to the High Atlas to do this 6-month ceremony called the Magic of Abramelin the Mage, and it's a 6-month ceremony at the end of which you meet your holy guardian angel and then your demons. But when I was preparing for it, I was going, well, this may not be real, and I may just be meeting aspects of myself. Me, my better self, is my angel. The demons are my own inner hungry ghosts that I haven't dealt with, that I need to meet. I was prepared for it not to be real. I tell this little bit of story quite often because of the point it makes. So 6 months ceremony, which consisted mainly of having built a chapel, cut the wand, got the oil, got the robes, and ending up the last 2 months, you're on your knees in this chapel, praying to meet your holy guardian angel and saying that you're just a little worm. I'm not really worth it, but please could I meet my holy guardian angel? Please, 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 please. You do, and that's going on for 6 hours a day on your knees in the chapel. And at the end of the 6 months, I'm on my knees going, please, 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 please. And nothing happened. And I just went, oh, you're an idiot. Completely deluded. And I went back into the little hunting lodge, off-grid, lived off-grid for 2 years up there, and wept, just wept. And then after I'd wept, a little voice in my head said, come back in. Come back to the little chapel oratory. And I went, like a wet dog, like a wet poodle, bedraggled spaniel, I went back into the oratory, got down on my knees and said, yeah, okay, what's happening. And felt it all. Felt it all. Felt it all. So, from that moment on, my experience has been not simply what I had as a 5-year-old, that there are presences there or a presence there, but that dimension is as much there always as you and the room and the floor and the ceiling. But in the same way as if I'm over-involved in myself or overexcited, I don't really notice you. I can talk to you, but I don't actually know you're there. I'm not in relationship with you. You have relationships with people where people just talk at you. They don't know you're there. And you have times when you walk down the street and you're just in yourself. You're not noticing what is actually there. So I see it in the same way. Either I'm with you and aware of you, or I'm not, because I'm dealing with other arousals, dealing with other reactions. And it's precisely the same thing. Either I'm aware of this whole other dimension, or I'm not, because I'm involved in myself. In terms of knowing what's there in this other dimension, it's problematic for us because it doesn't hit you on the side of the face like a wet fish. You know, it's not like walking into a barn door. Boom, it's there, you know it's there. Which is what people who are beginners in angel and fairy and nature spirit work want. They want something to pop up which is as real as shaking hands with a solid creature. So they're rushing around with cameras and waiting for that experience. And they may have that experience as a kind of flash. It's almost as if the angel world is saying, yes, of course we're here, Dumbo. Yeah, we'll let you have one picture, one experience, and now learn how to do it. You know, we've watched you wanting it for a long time. If you want to learn how to do it, there's only one way of doing it in actual fact, because it's maybe 1 in a million people's clairvoyant in a way that's actually genuinely able to perceive. The rest of us know there's something in our field, and then we interpret it through our psychic mechanism. But the only way you get to know what's in your field is precisely the same as, am I talking at you, or am I aware that you're there? So if I stop and I go, oh, I'm aware that you're there, and if it were a genuine relationship, I was starting with you, I would shut up, wouldn't I? I'd shut up and I would allow myself. It's like you're a good practicing therapist, right? Talk therapist. I would allow myself to just be there with you. And being there with you, I would be receptive to whatever you're communicating to me. Or I would be receptive as an empath, as someone who's sensitive to the vibe, I would be receptive to your resonance, your mood, your colours, your sounds. And it's precisely the same for me with the angel spirit world. I need to shut up and just be open and allow myself to have the experience of it. I imagine many of you are resonating with this. Can I just have a little show of hands? Yeah, great. Lots of hands going up. Yeah, great. 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 It's reassuring for me, and also it shows the other people in the room. I'm talking amongst brothers and sisters. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to give the talk as well, not just to come home, but also I knew it might be useful for you to hear someone else who does the same work. You know, and I've thought enough about it to be able to articulate it this way, which may be useful. So what I learnt up in the mountains in Morocco was that if I want to have those experiences and I want to continue the relationship, then it's precisely the same as walking down Oxford Street or walking down Glastonbury High Street on a Saturday morning or Samhain or one of the festival days when there's loads of people in it. I can walk down it, or if I want to, I could sit on the bench noticing who's walking down and possibly come into a relationship with someone, pause and have a conversation. If I'm in a bad mood, agitated in myself, I don't notice anything. Someone can come and sit down next to me and have a talk, and I'm just talking at them, or I have an agenda, or I want relationship. You know, but if I just sit and allow, then I'm in rapport. So for me, then, angels, nature spirits, elementals don't pop up as if by some kind of miracle to give me an experience or make me know I'm special because I'm having an experience of them. For me, it's just always there, and it's as full and as complex and as multiverse as everything we can see in the solid world. It's not just, it's everything and everywhere. And again, a story I often tell is of about 25 years ago when shamanism and indigenous peoples' energy work was beginning to become popular. Some of the tribal medicine people from Africa were coming to London, not many of them. And one of them came to London to give a couple of talks and do some healings. And I can't remember his name. It was a friend of Malidoma Some's somewhere in that network, if you remember him. And after 4 or 5 days in London, gave a talk, did a couple of healings. He said, I cannot work here, I'm going home. And why? 2 reasons. He was going home because, one, when he was healing, when somebody came to him for healing, he said, they don't bring their family and neighbours. So how can I possibly work with this person? How can I possibly work with this person, if he doesn't bring the community out of which his illness emerges? And it's constellation work in modern European language. What can be going on here? I can't work with them. This is banal, he said. Stupid, ignorant, because illnesses emerge out of an individual's place in their community and social system, which good psychiatry and social work recognizes. So I can't work with that. And he said the second thing is you have the most stupid attitude to spirits and angels. You seem to think that a spirit or an angel will pop up and just be there for you, and they're in everything and part of everything. This is just stupid. And he said, I meet people who are into angels and they think there are just special angels. Here's this archangel and this archangel and this archangel. It's stupid, right? Because it's everything, everywhere. Yes, of course there are those archangels, but not. And I went, yes. So those of us who, I'll speak for myself again. So it's easier to do in nature than in human society, because in nature I don't have the stimulation of other human beings triggering me. Whatever it is, triggering me into being interested, triggering me into thinking about things, triggering me into relationship, or whatever it is. So it's easier to do it in nature than it is to do it when there are people around. And it's easier to do it in a quiet space with nobody around. But in nature, it's every single cell, flower, plant, stalk, blade of grass, tree, leaf, cloud, rock, stone, grain of sand. We know all this, don't we? From the poets and the energy workers, every single one of them has within it or associated with it some kind of life. Some kind of life. And you can just feel it if you allow yourself to be if I allow myself to be in relationship with it. If I want to know specifically about something, like, I don't have a lot of time for gardening, but I have to prune this bay tree that's got completely out of hand. And I don't prune, so it's, hello bay tree spirit, I don't know what I'm doing. So, because it's like 20 foot higher than it should be. And we just left it alone for 10 years, and it's gone mad, and it's got about 8 and 9. What are those bits called? Trunks. The bits. What are those bits called? Branches, aren't they? Leaves. Anyway. So how am I going to do this? So it's like, shut up and just be in relationship. And I'm ignorant, so I'm not going to trust my first impression. I'm going to do it 5, 6 times, and then at some point, the spirit of this tree tells me, okay, William, take out the clumsy-looking branches around the bottom so you can have a better look. So I do that. And I'm getting an impression from the spirit of the tree. Now, the way that works, I think I learnt at a place called Findhorn, a spiritual community in Scotland, where, for various reasons, they asked me 30 years ago, they said, would you come and do a workshop here on spirits and angels? And I went, no, I'm not going to work with anybody on this, because I'm just going to get people wearing purple cloaks and selling crystals and looking as if they own shops in Glastonbury High Street. I just can't work with them, because they'll drive me nuts, right? And I just wouldn't know how to handle them. They said, no, go on, please, right? And if anybody here is a shop owner, I love you. Really. I was just joshing. I was just how to make friends and anyway. So at the workshop at Findhorn, 24 people signed up. So I'm in a room with 24 people for a week. Got to guide them through, and what they all had in common was they were having experiences and didn't have anywhere to talk about it, didn't have anywhere to explore it, and they trusted Findhorn, and they trusted anybody who was facilitating there to be useful, and they divided naturally into particular groups, because I had to get them into small groups. And there was a group of ceremonialists and ritualists that included Wicca, pagan, and a Catholic priest. Ceremonialists. But the thing they had in common was when they were doing ceremony, they felt presences. There was another group that were healers. That included a medical doctor and people, healing trust people and Reiki type folk. And again, osteopath and homeopath, I think. And again, what they had in common as a group was when they were working with a client, with a patient, both before the patient came and when the patient was there, they felt something there, guiding, helping, attracting them into the right way of working with them. And then there were some creatives, artists, painters, writers, architects, who also felt a muse, they called the muse, that a muse was there enabling them. And there were people in business who also felt the same way. And what emerged from that was this common pattern of whatever work they were doing, if they bothered to pause and be open to the notion that there was a guiding spirit, template, blueprint, angel, that had a sense of how perfect the healing, or the tree, or the piece of music, or the ceremony could be. If they could just connect with that template, that idea, that archetype, that would allow their own creativity to emerge perfectly into the situation. So it wasn't that they were being told what to do, And it wasn't that they were being told how to do it. It was that they were getting a sense, like a magnetic attraction that they could expand into, and then their own volition and will and energy and work then did the actual thing in their own particular style. But it was something that inspired and drew them to it. Perfect description of a muse in art. Perfect description of a healing angel. You know, where the healing angel is not actually doing the transmission, but is holding the field so that the healer has a sense of where am I going to touch the person first? What's the first sentence I'm going to use to open up the dialogue with my client? Just that feeling into it's an intuitive sense. In Theosophy, and Alice Bailey in particular, whose book could sink 1,000 ships, Treatise on Cosmic Fire, heavy, big book. I have read it. I don't understand 2/3 of it. Anybody else read it? Oh, silence. Deadly silence in the room. Right? It's the post-PhD esoteric book in this realm, right? I think. I recommend, but it's so difficult to read. I'm going to sum it up in a minute. Save you the horror of having to read it. The notion is, you know when you have an atom, the thing that's bewildering science, still bewildering science, is how does the thing hold together? How come it's solid? Because you look at the atom through a high photon microscope and all the rest of it, and it's just sparkles of waves of little energy which have hardly any form and loads of space in between them. Yeah, you all know that. So how come it's solid at the same time? How come all these little bits and pieces that are energy sparklets with no form manage to create form? And the other one that goes with that is, what on earth is gravity? How is everything held together? It's still bewildering science, quantum physics, that whole area. What's it all about? And in this theosophical, anthroposophical, occult, esoteric understanding of, I wonder what those bangs are. Any guesses? Fireworks. Yay. They're beautiful. In this anthroposophical this is really, really interesting. Stay with me. So you've got the little electrons, or whatever they are, and then in between them, there's magnetism, or something that's mysterious to modern science, and according to the esoteric traditions, that thing that's holding them together is at a most basic level angelic matter. Elemental matter. So, at the most basic atomic form, an atom is held together by a tiny piece of nature's spirit, deva, angel, whatever you call it. Say it's magnetism. Now, in this world, those little bits and pieces build up to create bodies and chairs and rooms and elephants and giraffes and candelabras. Isn't it bizarre to have candelabras in here? Yeah. We know that's what the atoms build up to do. And in the same way, that little thing that's holding an atom together, that magnetism, those waves of magnetic energy, they also have their evolutionary stream. So magnetic fields, let's call it magnetic fields. Magnetic fields evolve and have their own hierarchy or ladder of complexity in the same way that the atomic matter you can touch and feel has its own ladder of complexity, going from a little atom through to a galaxy. Do you follow me? And they're very, very different. So the nature spirit fairy or elf, its body is made up of a magnetic field. It's not made up of atomic structures. It's made up of a magnetic field, and its job is just to hold the flower together. It has the template, the blueprint of the flower. If you're present to a flower, the flower can melt away, and yet the presence is still there. If you're present to a tree, the tree could melt away, and the tree is still there. If you're present to a mountain or a river, they can melt away, and yet there's a presence still there, which is not just an echo of it. It's not just an imprint of it. It's actually something in its own right, something that's alive. Yes? Lots of people nodding. So everything you can see and touch, from the tiniest little atom through to everything that's tangible, has associated with it and within it this other life. So my body, I experience my body as not just its physiology, but if I do a practice like the inner smile. Yeah, the inner smile is, if you're going to teach it in terms of medicine and mindfulness, it would be stop, pause, drop into your body, allow your stomach to sink, earth, open up, be like a goddess, big fat goddess on a damp clay field, lovely. Then you turn your attention down into your body. You send messages through your nervous system into your endocrine system that trigger certain shifts that take you out of arousal and adrenaline and anxiety into stuff that's more mellow. So the messages from brain into nervous system into endocrine system have this immediate effect. It's the basic exercise in a lot of Oriental medicine, that you sink down into your body and give it kindness. From this nature, spirit, and elemental perspective, another thing's going on. My consciousness, whatever that is, don't understand it, but it's there. My consciousness is going, hello, little elementals of my body that are in every cell. And all the elementals are going, getting some attention, getting some radiation. And they're responding to the resonance of my attention, as opposed to this kind of quite sophisticated psychoneuroimmunological model of working through mind, nervous system, and endocrine system. This other way of doing it is, hello, it's all alive. Hi. And in Taoism, the organs have a life of their own, and they all go, hello. And I don't think that's either fantasy or a projection or just a medical metaphor. I think it's real. I think it's very real. It is all alive. And at the moment, it's held together by my consciousness being in it. And that makes it interesting enough for it all to be held together. So I look at my body, I'm in the last decades of my life, so I'm looking at death, and I'm realizing that as I withdraw my attention from this body for the next part of the journey, the elementals that make up my body go, he's not really interested in us anymore. Dust to dust, earth to earth. It's time to let go. It's a different way of experiencing how my body dies and how my body composts. It's much more interesting. Makes death really fun. Which I think is a good thing, isn't it, compared to a lot of the depression around death. You're releasing all the elementals of your body to go off and have a party somewhere else. It's gorgeous, isn't it? So in this perspective, you've got this, in my world, I've got that going on in my body. I've got, before I come here, I'm lying in bed for 20 minutes going, okay, Angel of good communication, angel of education, angel of Glastonbury, be present. Just hold the space. Just hold the space, and I will do the best I can not to screw up the magnetic appeal that the spirits hold. Then we come to size and grandeur. This is the way I experience it. I don't know whether you do. So I'm going from little elementals in an atom and in my body and blades of grass. Because, as children, you lie on the ground, every blade of grass is a little creature that you can play with. You don't have to be trees. It's just everything's interesting. Everything's alive. So my experience of Glastonbury, for example, is that I'll just the overarching angel of the place, the overarching spirit of the place that holds the template for the place and the vortex of the place, this overarching spirit is several miles high, several miles wide, with an aura that extends at least to London and beyond, and is not something that sits in your shrine at home on Wearill Hill. It's big and has a sense of energy fields and flows that move across Europe and across the Atlantic. It's like scale it up. The sun, it's not just the sun, but the sun has this presence. And it's more than just the energy of the sun. It's something. And in a lot of esoterics, there's the sense of the angels of the planets, the angels of the solar logos. We're scaling up big. But this is going back to the African. These people don't know anything about it. This sense of the deva, which is the Hindu word for shining spirit, angel world. The Devic world is intertwined with everything we can see and touch, all the way out to the expanse of the cosmos, down to the tiniest little grain. There's this other dimension, and my experience of allowing myself to open to it, for the type of person I am, with the kind of mind I have and the kind of psyche I have, and because I have dedicated myself to love and not power and control and getting success. That's one of the first things you learn in this work. Very, very early on, you have to choose your path. Chose love decades ago. A teenager, just love, of course. What else? Otherwise, you're just going to have a bad time. Choose love. For someone like me, feeling into the angel spirit, elemental world, knowing it's a manifestation of love, and there are pockets of shit as well, but in general, being aware of the love is very useful for my growth. That's why I do it. It's not that I like going to Disneyland and having all the fantastic things in it, which are marvelous in their own right, but the resonance of it, the ambience of it, the expansiveness of it helps me grow, helps my heart expand, helps my consciousness expand, which, because I'm working with that in a very earthed way, I hope, allows me also to be in far better relationship with my community of human beings and nature and all that is. I don't space out. I don't disassociate. I have reflective practice, so day by day I'm looking at what kind of bullshit I'm running inside myself. So I'll give you one, I think, last example of how meaningful all this is to me. The Trump stuff and the Brexit stuff. Just brackets, number one, I'm ashamed of how many of my liberal, green friends are sending bad energy at the situation and at Trump. I'm ashamed of it. Because bad energy towards Trump will only feed into more bad actions. I'm ashamed of people having this polarised judgments on him. He's a spoilt brat. But if you've got your own child as a spoilt brat, you love and you create boundaries. Love and boundaries, love and boundaries. And we step in with activism when they bully. But I'm just saying, any of you here still bad-mouthing him and running bad energy, stop it. You're making it worse. And we need to be activists as well. Anyway, that's my opinion. But what's interesting for me as a lefty communard who despises, it's a strong word to use, I despise most of what he stands for. What's interesting for me is in meditation and just being open to what's happening and trying to catch the rhythm of history here, I'm noticing that this is my world. Welcome to my world. The angels that represent and hold the folk spirit, the Volksgeist of France, of Germany, of Italy, of the United States, of Canada, of the British Isles, those angels of which the Glastonbury angel at its size is part of in terms of companionship and collegiality and sisterhood. Those angels at a certain level are going, phew, okay, it's time to allow us to re-establish some boundaries and the uniqueness of who we are. Because the angel, in some of you may know, there was a philosophy in the 1800s that God, goddess, incarnated into the landscape and the culture of the people and their language. This relationship between goddess, God, and the culture of the people sparked and created a soul or an angel for that area, for that place. And that was part of the garden of humanity. Yes, we're all part of one species, but at the same time we have different ethnicities and different localities and different geographies and different myth languages and different folk songs and different forms of art. One of the beautiful things about world music is this recognition of different forms of music around the world, and different forms of ritual and different forms of the sacred and all the different forms. Now, is all that to be blamanged, melted into one single global thing? It had swung too far that way. So somehow or other there needs to be something that's inclusive and allows diversity and is also respectful and loving. And it was just very interesting for me as a lefty internationalist to have my preconceptions about how things should be, just as I was feeling into the angels of the folk spirits of these nations, going, yeah, let's have a few years of re-establishing our identity. It's an interesting idea, isn't it? And it's a very dangerous idea, because in the late 20s and 30s, Hitler appropriated that particular idea to justify how he led Germany and the rise of Nazism. Yeah, so it's dangerous. It's a dangerous idea, but at the same time, in terms of us lot, if people in this room, if we in this room are way showers in terms of consciousness and love and big-heartedness and openness to the way life changes and the globe changes and the shifts in history, and not expecting impatiently. To be impatient about humanity's changes is unrealistic. Anyone who's a parent in here, you know it's unrealistic to be impatient about your children's development. Any of you are teachers, coaches, therapists, educationists, carers, just decent human beings, it's unrealistic to be impatient. What works is patience and holding and nudging and all the rest of the art form of being a carer. And it's the same with humanity as a whole. So if we are way showers, what's interesting about this big angelic perspective for me is, bloody hell, I got lost. I went up my own arse in terms of an opinion, a political opinion about how terrible it was, and I need to step back and have a look and see what's going on at the inner, and there's stuff happening there that's interesting and possibly useful, but needs guiding. So, that's my world. From getting up in the morning and saying hello to the tree and the elementals in my body and saying hello to the sun, through to trying to be very real about how this stuff works in the world too. You know, at the heart of Western philosophy and Plato, for example, what I'm talking about is not unusual. People who love Steiner, Rudolf Steiner, he wrote precisely about this stuff. Yeah, at all levels, from elemental through to the nation spirits. Alice Bailey, Madame Blavatsky, Annie Besant, Dion Fortune, who lived here for a while, all worked with national angels and wrote about national angels as much as they did about plants and spirits. So, I like sitting, and I like being present to all the elemental life, in me, in the garden, in the house, in Glastonbury, in the world, and just being present to it and learning from it as best I can. That's my experience. And I realized the last 10 minutes went off on a kind of political one, but it's so immediate, isn't it? All that stuff. It's so immediate that I couldn't zip up on it. And I'm sorry if that last 10 minutes provoked you in any way. I did not mean to, or maybe I did. Should we take a minute's silence and just let it settle? Okay. Questions, protests, provocations, insights, everything is welcome. Go.
I heard you say that elementals within and spirits in nation and spirits without, angels without. What about the angel that is my own body or your own body? Do you have one of those? If you do, what's the significance of that?
That is a question about, in my language, esoteric anatomy. So, yes, there is a spirit of the body which is different from in my map, different from the person's overlighting angel. And you can see this if you work in, you might have seen it with a friend who's in approaching death, and in the months, or someone who's been in critical conditions, you can see at points where you think they might be dying, they should be dying, and you can feel their whole body. Something arises, there's an elemental force that arises in their body, and they just won't die, won't be ill, will recover. Has anybody experienced that with friends or, yeah? And there's the whole elemental of the body doing its thing. And the elemental of the body, you know, is very forceful in terms of lust and desire and for status and food, right? And it has a life of its own. Yeah, absolutely. And then yeah, but it has lives within it, like a forest. You know, a forest is an ecology of its own with a landscape spirit that belongs to the forest, and then there are the trees and the rivers and the individual bits and pieces. So it's complex and really interesting. And I'm not an expert in it, but it's really interesting. And you know, again, for all of us, that whole area is understood best by just being very quiet and present to it. Very quiet and present, and just being with it. It's interesting.
and it strikes me that we're totally immersed in that presence from what you're saying, and yet many of us, even if we really want to, find it quite difficult to tune in to that presence. And why don't those angelic and elemental presences make themselves more felt and more present? Because we need them.
Yeah, it's a lovely question. I've got. Why is it not so easy for some of us to feel it? I've got two answers. I know there's a scale of sensitivity and empathy in people. So often in my groups, I will say, let's see where you sit on that scale in terms of sensitivity to atmospheres and to the point of being overwhelmed sometimes by what's going on. And you can go into a pub and you know exactly what the atmosphere is like. And if your child comes home or your husband, partner comes home, you can tell exactly what mood they're in the moment they open the door. Even if you didn't see them, you can feel it. Through to, I don't really feel anything often, right? And people sit on different levels of the empathy scale or the sensitivity scale. And that, to me, is to do with how highly strung your nervous system is. So if you're up this level, where I am, at one level, I'm a highly strung hysteric. You know, and I've had, the reason I'm so into all this is because I am empathic and I experience myself as hysterical, and I've had to learn to self-manage. And so and my sense is, as souls, we choose to incarnate into a body type for one reason or another. And those of us who are very, very sensitive, I think it's partly to do with, if you're very, very sensitive, you can't miss feeling love and the goddess. You can't miss feeling it and knowing it's there. And at the same time, you're prone to a certain type of breakdown and overload. God, goddess, love, it can be felt by everybody at certain times. And in terms of the spirit world, it's subtle. It's subtle. So my suggestion to everybody, and people just don't do it. If you genuinely want the experience, you have to sit quietly for an hour a day. Day by day, by day, by day, by day, by day, by day, for years. And then the whole arousal system gets soothed, goes calm, and what's subtle becomes more obvious. And people go, well, that's not what shamans and wise women in the woods do. And I go, it's precisely what they do. Precisely what they do. They're in the landscape, in their little homes, stirring their pots. They're just... And they have long periods of just sitting in the woods, sitting with the fire. Long, long periods. Not called meditation. Meditation's been hijacked by, I don't know. It's all traditions have people just going quiet. So if you're up this end, that's my answer. Is that helpful?
Because it's a subtle energy that we haven't tuned into that type of it.
It's subtle. It is subtle. It's not like as I said earlier, it's not like a fish slapping you in the face. It is subtle. It's very subtle. And if you're really into it, it's daily practice and exploring and being present and exploring what happens if you ask to meet a particular spirit. What does it feel like? Dun, 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 dun. Practice. This is practice.
I think that practice sounds absolutely fabulous as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
The best part of my life, if I could go and sit in a jungle or a forest for at least an hour every day. Yeah. I'd be happy.
Yeah, but I do it at home. Quiet space. It's not a discipline. It's just, we call it sometimes soaking in the hot tub of the goddess.
Drinking off the tip of the goddess.
Yeah. Leave those words in your mouth. But the whole body. I've not got it on the mouth. I've just got it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. With your consciousness awake in the middle of it all, noticing, enwisening, being present. Yeah. Yeah.
So, how do you stay empathic and sensitive, but also grounded and protected?
Yeah.
Because when you're open, you can be pulled in so many ways. Like just being sensitive to people's emotions is difficult enough.
Yeah, you are 100% right. And I should have talked about it earlier. When I came back from my 2 years in the mountains, I came back to London. After 2 years off-grid up in the mountains, back to central London, I was just a wobbly piece of neurotic jelly for a few months, and in a very bad mood. And I started to do properly all the exercises I'd learnt before I went to do with psychic protection. And having put them into practice over and over again, I wrote a book, the Psychic Protection book. And so you really, if you're going to do this work, very, very early on, you have to learn how to sink into your body to be safe, which is what grounding really is. It's not, for me, it's not a deep connection with the earth, but that is hugely important. The most important thing about grounding is you're fully sunk into your body. You're in what in martial arts is called hara. You're in your body, you're sunk into your womb. You're sunk into your womb, and you know how to enclose yourself. And I have some of my students, I have them buy a cheap watch like this, have it go off every hour, and every hour sink into the bodies, put themselves in a bubble, every hour for a year. At the end of which, okay, feeling safe. Now I'm going to feel something, I'm going to open up a little bit, notice it, close down. Open, close. Space, it should be the first steps. And I should have mentioned it, so thank you for making sure I have. Yeah, it's crucial. At the back, and then.
How far do you think the beings you described, say like big being of Glastonbury or racial tribal beings, or even small blades of grass beings, have got the capacity for awareness, or is that a capacity that is within humans or certain beings?
Yeah. That is a lovely question. What type of consciousness? Does the Deva stream, the angel nature spirit stream, have self-awareness? In my map, which again I borrow out of theosophical, anthroposophical, esoteric streams, there's quite some clarity there. And they suggest that in the same way that a rock has a different form of consciousness from a plant, and a plant has a different form of consciousness from an animal animal has a different form of consciousness from a human, so in the Deva stream, there are also different forms of consciousness. And there's a stage at which, in that stream, yes, of course, they develop self-awareness, just as human beings have that level of self-awareness. In some of the esoteric models, that's the point at which they're called angels. Prior to that, they're not called angels. It's in one model. Now, what's interesting about that, because I was thinking about that before I came into the talk, if it was going to crop up, it was, if you're with angels that have self-awareness, you're not to then suppose or presume they're like human beings in the fact in that they can act, or they want to act, which is our stream. It's like their whole history is of being made up of magnetism, and now they've got self-awareness, and it's another dimension, it's another way of being, and I can't, even though I'm a wordsmith, I can't articulate how different it is. Sometimes some writers have tried to articulate it in the language of, well, they see sound and they hear colour. And just as we are learning to be, they're learning to do. And they're all kind of pointing to the fact that it's different from us. And it's a nice mind boggle to try and get into that. But yes, when you get to something like the Angel of Glastonbury, or the Angel of London, or the Angel of Democracy, these beings that are old, hugely experienced and had in their aura hundreds of thousands of interesting thinkers and feelers and people, they have extraordinary consciousness. But the conversations you then have with them in terms of impression are not the same as this conversation. It's tones and resonances, and it's psychedelic. It's weird. WYRD. It's but very engaging. Thank you for asking that. Really interesting question. You're hovering as though we should end.
No, that's fine. How do you deal with self-doubt, especially when you have one experience and that should be enough? You should be like, I believe, but it doesn't seem to happen like that.
No, it doesn't. No, one experience is not enough. And this is all the way because you've got a human body with an elemental in it that is doing things like eating and relating and all the rest of it, you know. And it's back to the conversation we're having. It's daily practice. The tastes are little flags being waved at you by the cosmos saying, yes, it's real, and now do the work. It's like psychedelics and MDMA and mushrooms. You have to have the experience, you know, and then it's now do the work, integrate it, ground it, right? It's a gateway. You're not supposed to stand in the gateway going, I'd like to have the experience again, please. You're supposed to walk through it and then start doing the practices. And over again, in spirituality, aren't we? We're meeting people who've had one or two experiences and wandering around going, saying, I want another one, what should I do? And then they meet boring people like me who say, do daily practice. You know, and they go, oh, yeah, I want to do daily practice. What can you do? You know. But the point is, you meet boring people like me, it doesn't matter what tradition you come from, you're going to find the same answer. You know, if you really, really want to, you're going to have to do daily practice. You know, in some way or another, whatever gateway you use from whatever tradition you use, you'll end up in a space where you're quiet and in an altered state of consciousness in your body going, what the fuck is going on? Excuse the bad language, people. But you know, it's weird. It's mysterious. On that note, shall we end? Do you think are we cooked? People?
We've got loads more.
You've got loads more. What time is it? It's coming up to 9. Oh, it's kind of cooked, isn't it? Yeah, so a couple of minutes quiet just to close it down.